I know that you've told me before that your version of Snow White is different, and it's more of a 2022 version of Snow White. What did you mean by that?
I mean, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
So no Prince?
All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby. But it's one of those things.
So true,
it's
yeah.
an inner journey that she goes on to find her true self.
When Disney quietly pulled Snow White from its streaming platform, fans weren't just confused, they were stunned.
Okie dokie. I am walking into Snow White, 2 p.m., now seating. Let's see how empty it is. I hope, it's off the walk we go. I hope. Sound like I hear a couple of people. 1, 2.
I'll deliver the following. The most important thing when you are working on a film is teamwork. And when you have characters like the Evil Queen and Snow White, you expect teamwork to play a role in the creative process when you are trying to put something special together. We didn't really have teamwork, and there were many setbacks that we had to deal with during this entire process. And I just found that to be very
Please?
For which movie?
This wasn't just any movie. It was supposed to be a billion-dollar crown jewel, with a rising star in Rachel Zegler and a legacy that dates back nearly a century. Instead, it disappeared, almost like Disney hoped we'd forget it ever happened. So what went so wrong? How did one of the most iconic stories in animation history collapse in its live-action form before it even had a chance to redeem itself on Disney+? But this wasn't just about a movie that didn't meet expectations. What happened behind the scenes, from casting decisions to political tensions, turned Snow White into a... When Disney quietly pulled Snow White from its streaming platform, fans weren't just confused, they were stunned. This wasn't just any movie. It was supposed to be a billion-dollar crown. Before a single frame of the film had even hit the screen, Snow White was already drowning in backlash. And most of it centered around the woman chosen to play the legendary princess. Rachel Zegler, a 22-year-old actress of Colombian and Polish descent, was cast in the role of Snow White, a character famously described in the original story as having skin as white as snow. And the internet? It erupted. Some praised Disney's decision to diversify their casting and move away from traditional expectations, but others weren't buying it. Critics flooded comment sections, accusing Disney of forcing modern-day social agendas into a classic tale that, for better or worse, had long been associated with Eurocentric. Before a single frame of the film had even hit the screen, Snow White was already drowning in backlash. And most of it centered around the woman chosen. Before a single frame of the film had even hit the screen, Snow White was already drowning in backlash. And most of it centered around the woman chosen to play the legendary princess. Rachel Zegler, a 22-year-old actress of Colombian and Polish descent, was cast in the role of Snow White, a character famously described in the original story as having skin as white as snow. And the internet? It erupted. Some praised Disney's decision to diversify their casting and move away from traditional expectations, but others weren't buying it. Critics flooded comment sections, accusing Disney of forcing modern-day social agendas into a classic tale that, for better or worse, had long been associated with Eurocentric imagery. Zegler herself responded to the criticism with confidence, saying she was proud to bring a new kind of Snow White to life. But her confidence only seemed to fuel the fire. And then came the dwarfs. Instead of casting actors with dwarfism, it wasn't just the casting that had people talking. It was what Rachel Zegler said once she had the spotlight. In interviews meant to promote the film, Zegler made it clear her version of Snow White was not the story people remembered. She's not going to be saved by a prince, she said in one clip that quickly went viral. She's not dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be. To some, her take was refreshing, a much-needed update to a fairy tale rooted in outdated ideas. But for a huge portion of the internet, it came off as condescending. Critics accused her of dismissing the original film entirely, calling it anti-romance and anti-feminine, and arguing that she seemed embarrassed to be associated with the character at all. But the backlash wasn't just about what she said, it was how she said it. Her tone, confident, sarcastic, even a bit smug in some interviews, rubbed people the wrong way. The idea that she was mocking a beloved Disney classic made her an easy target. Clips of Zegler joking about how weird she found the prince character or how she watched the original once and never again were clipped, reposted, and memed endlessly. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't about Snow White, it was about Zegler's attitude, and the internet did what it does best. It turned on her. Overnight, fan pages were flooded with criticism. Boycotts began trending. Former supporters went silent. It wasn't just disagreement, it felt personal. But while she was fighting off backlash, something even more explosive was brewing behind the scenes, and it had nothing to do with fairy tales. As if the backlash over the film itself wasn't enough, Rachel Zegler found herself swept into something far bigger and far more dangerous. In late 2023, as global tensions escalated in the Middle East, celebrities across Hollywood were asked, directly or indirectly, where they stood. For Zegler, who had previously voiced strong support for social justice causes, it didn't take long for her name to be attached to pro-Palestinian advocacy. Online, clips began circulating of her past support for Palestinian rights, along with resurfaced tweets and retweets that many found politically charged. Fans were divided. Some admired her courage, others accused her of taking sides in a deeply polarizing global conflict. And while she never made an explicit statement during the Snow White press cycle, the association was already made. The timing couldn't have been worse. Because standing just across from Zegler in Snow White was another name sparking political tension, Gal Gadot. Gadot, who played the evil queen, is an Israeli actress and former IDF soldier. She has publicly supported Israel on multiple occasions, especially during the height of the Gaza conflict. That alone turned the film into a symbolic battlefield for opposing ideologies. Suddenly, it wasn't just a princess and a villain, it was two actresses caught in the crossfire of a real-world war. Online discourse got uglier by the day. People weren't just debating casting choices anymore. They were accusing Disney of pushing political messaging, of trying to appease both sides and failing miserably. Protesters showed up outside press events. Social media campaigns began urging audiences to boycott the film entirely. And Disney, sensing the growing volatility, started scaling everything back. Red carpets became photo calls, interviews were canceled, and a premiere that should have been a celebration of legacy became a whisper. But even as the political storm reached its peak, something else was quietly happening behind the scenes. Something that made the backlash permanent. By the time Snow White finally hit theaters, the damage was already done. The buzz, what little remained, wasn't about the film's visuals, music, or performances. It was about the chaos surrounding it. Audiences weren't excited. They were skeptical. Online, the movie had already become a meme before it even opened. And when opening weekend numbers dropped, they hit like a thud. Despite its massive $240 million budget, Snow White pulled in a painfully low global return, failing to even cross the break-even point. Critics gave mixed reviews, many praising Zegler's voice and performance, others questioning the film's tone, pacing, and heavy-handed rewriting of the original story. Fans? They either stayed home or showed up just to hate watch. But Disney didn't just lose money. It lost momentum, and fast. In what looked like a damage control move, the studio began distancing itself from the project entirely. Merchandising slowed to a crawl. International marketing was scaled back. And most shocking of all, just months after its release, Disney Plus quietly pulled Snow White from its platform. No announcement, no fanfare. Just gone. The internet noticed immediately. Screenshots of the missing listing flooded Reddit and Twitter. Fans speculated everything from copyright issues to silent bans. But to many, it felt like confirmation of what they already suspected. Disney didn't want to be associated with Snow White anymore. And for Rachel Zegler, who had once been hailed as the next Disney darling, this disappearance hit especially hard. A film that should have cemented her as a household name had instead become a cultural flashpoint, and now a digital ghost. But what really happened here? Was it Zegler's fault? Was it political? Or was there something deeper at play? Something Hollywood still refuses to acknowledge. Because as wild as Snow White's collapse was, it might not be about the princess at all. The failure of Snow White was loud, messy, and highly public. But if you step back, it wasn't just about Rachel Zegler, or even the controversies that followed her. It was part of a much bigger trend, one Disney may not want to admit. In recent years, the magic that once defined Disney's brand has started to crack. The formula that worked for Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast, and The Lion King just isn't landing the same way anymore. Audiences aren't as forgiving, nor are they as easy to impress. And live-action remakes? They're starting to feel more like expensive nostalgia bait than true reimaginings. Snow White simply happened to be the tipping point. There's also franchise fatigue, something Disney's been quietly battling across all its properties. From Star Wars to the MCU, fans are beginning to tune out, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of content and underwhelmed by the lack of original storytelling. For many, Snow White didn't feel like a celebration of the classic. It felt like a corporate attempt to rebrand it for the algorithm era. But here's the real twist. Even with all the controversy, even with the political firestorms and internet takedowns, Snow White might not have failed because it was woke or modernized. It may have failed because people are tired of watching the same story, dressed up in a shinier costume, and being told it's something new. And Rachel Zegler, she just happened to be the face at the wrong place at the wrong time. Still, her career isn't over. She's already landed major roles on stage and screen, and despite the hate, her talent is hard to ignore. But the film she was meant to lead as a breakout star has become a case study in how Hollywood misreads its audience and how quickly a fairy tale can turn into a cautionary tale. Because in the end, it wasn't the poisoned apple that did Snow White in. It was everything that came after.